Total industrial conversion. The United States did not defeat the Axis, it outmanufactured them until their world collapsed. On December 7, 1941, America was a consumer paradise of chrome and convenience. By the following sunrise, that paradise was systematically dismantled to build a monolithic arsenal. This wasn't a policy change. It was a violent, total execution of the largest economic pivot in human history. To see the shock in action, look at Detroit. Before the war, it was the world's heartbeat of civilian life. Then came the executive order that froze the most powerful assembly lines on Earth in their tracks. From February 10, 1942, until the war's end, the entire American automotive industry produced exactly 139 civilian cars. Zero for the public. Millions of vehicles simply vanished from the market to make room for steel. The Big Three, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, didn't just pause. They mutated into terrifying industrial titans. General Motors alone manufactured everything from microscopic firing pins to the heavy shielding for the Manhattan Project. Over 4 years, GM delivered $12 billion in military hardware, exceeding $200 billion today. They pumped out 119,562,000 shells and 206,000 aircraft engines. This total sacrifice of civilian comfort created a production vacuum that the Axis, despite a decade of preparation, could never hope to fill. The American consumer traded their new car for a tidal wave of steel that would eventually crush the Third Reich. Workforce mobilization. The second shock delivered to the Axis wasn't just what was being built, but the identity of the hands building it. While Germany and Japan remained paralyzed by rigid traditional social structures, the United States activated a hidden army that shattered the face of labor forever. With 16 million American men heading to the front, the nation faced a labor void that threatened to silence every factory. The answer was a rapid mass mobilization of 19 million women into the workforce by 1944. Rosie the Riveter was not a character. She was an industrial reality. In aircraft plants across California, women accounted for a stunning 40% of the workforce. They were the ones operating heavy machinery and manning manual riveting guns on the fuselages of B-17 Flying Fortresses. By integrating women and minorities, American factories achieved a state of continuous 24/7 output. While the Axis hesitated to employ women in heavy industry due to ideology until it was far too late, American assembly lines never stopped. This 100% utilization of human potential meant that for every hour a German factory was dark, an American factory was outputting thousands of units of ammunition. This relentless human tide ensured the industrial machine never slept, creating a production gap that widened every second until the Axis simply could not keep up. This massive internal social revolution became the engine that fueled the next phase of the war, keeping the entire Allied world alive through an unprecedented global lifeline. The Lend-Lease Lifeline. Picture a Wehrmacht officer in 1943 peering through binoculars at a dust cloud on the horizon, expecting the slow, horse-drawn supply lines typical of European armies. Instead, he sees a relentless tide of 400,000 American-made Studebaker trucks and jeeps roaring across terrain that should have been impassable. This wasn't just a delivery, it was a total transplant of a global nervous system. While the Soviet Union provided the blood and iron, those soldiers were moving on a mobility platform that the Axis could not comprehend. The true shock was the chemical fire within those vehicles. Stalin's Katyusha rockets, the Stalin's organs that shattered German morale, would have been silent without the United States. Why? Because over 50% of the entire Soviet supply of explosives used in the war was cooked in American chemical vats in Delaware and New Jersey. At the Tehran Conference, Stalin admitted that without this industrial floodgate, the war would have been lost. Washington had effectively weaponized the U.S. Treasury, turning the conflict into a brutal math problem where the Axis were fighting the combined manufacturing output of a continent that was feeding and arming every one of their enemies simultaneously. By the time the Soviet steamroller reached Berlin, it was running on American fuel, powered by American TNT, and rolling on American tires. The Axis weren't just outfought, they were drowned by a logistical tsunami they never saw coming. This overwhelming material flow was supported by an even deeper advantage, an absolute, unshakable control over the very elements of modern power, oil and chemistry. Resource and fuel superiority. In the sky, The difference between living and falling in flames often came down to a single chemical number. While German engineers were obsessed with mechanical timing, they were losing a war of chemistry they couldn't even see. In 1944, the United States was pumping over 80% of the world's crude oil, but their unfair advantage was a clear liquid called 100-octane gasoline. This was the invisible predator of the air war. German pilots were forced to fly with coal-derived synthetic fuels that struggled to reach a 90-octane rating, putting a physical ceiling on their engines. American refineries, however, mastered a high-octane mass production process that allowed Allied engines to breathe. When a Mustang pilot pushed his throttle, his engine harnessed a 25% increase in raw horsepower that Axis engines couldn't touch without exploding. This chemical superiority meant Allied planes could fly higher, accelerate faster, and stay over the battlefield longer than anything the Luftwaffe had. It was a rigged game. A German pilot might be more experienced, but he was fighting with one lung tied behind his back. The 100-octane advantage meant that in every engagement, the American had the power to outclimb and outrun the enemy at will. This petrochemical dominance turned the clouds into a one-sided slaughterhouse. The collapse didn't happen because the Germans ran out of brave pilots. It happened because American industry made their machines chemically obsolete. But to keep these machines moving, America had to solve one more impossible problem: the loss of the world's most vital flexible material. Synthetic rubber innovation. Early in 1942, the American war machine faced an existential threat that had nothing to do with bullets. When Japan swept through Southeast Asia, they seized 90% of the world's natural rubber. Suddenly, the arsenal of democracy was a giant on wooden legs. No rubber meant no tires for trucks, no treads for tanks, and no gaskets for bombers. The United States was weeks away from a total industrial heart attack. The response was a chemical miracle ranked second only to the Manhattan Project. Washington didn't panic, they innovated. They summoned the brightest minds in the petrochemical industry with a mandate: create a tree-free rubber immediately. Failure was not an option, as every single mobile unit in the military depended on this invisible, elastic backbone to function. The resulting explosion of productivity was a miracle. Starting from virtually zero in 1941, American factories underwent a metamorphosis so rapid it seemed impossible. By 1944, the United States was pumping out 800,000 tons of synthetic rubber per year. This wasn't a patch, it was a floodgate. This industry produced enough polymer to manufacture millions of tires, ensuring every Allied vehicle stayed mobile, while German trucks were forced onto wooden wheels and steel rims. The Axis thought they had severed a vital artery. Instead, they forced American industry to grow a new, indestructible heart. This chemical revolution rendered the very idea of resource blockade obsolete, shifting the battle from the labs to the contest of maintenance on the front lines. The ability to innovate under such extreme pressure proved that American factories could invent their way out of any corner the Axis tried to push them into. Standardization versus over-engineering. War, stripped to its essence, is a contest of maintenance. While German high command became obsessed with Wunderwaffen, wonder weapons like the Tiger one, American industry embraced a far more lethal philosophy: the art of the replaceable. The Tiger one was a terrifying beast of steel, but only 1,350 were ever built. In stark contrast, American factories flooded the world with nearly 50,000 M4 Sherman tanks. The shock for the Axis wasn't that the Sherman was a better tank, it was that the Sherman was a persistent one. German tanks like the Panther were masterpieces of over-engineering, requiring specialized tools and master mechanics for even basic repairs. If a Panther's transmission failed, mechanics often had to disassemble the entire turret and floor, a nightmare that took days in a specialized workshop. Now, look at the American logic. The Sherman's transmission was designed as a modular unit. In the heat of the European theater, a grease-stained American crew could swap out an entire failed transmission and have the tank back in the firing line in less than 4 hours. This wasn't a fluke, it was by design. Every bolt, every screw, and every engine component was standardized across thousands of miles of ocean. A part made in Detroit fit perfectly into a tank broken down in a French hedgerow. This meant that while a superior German Tiger sat rusted and useless on the side of a road waiting for a custom-machined part from Essen, 5 good-enough Shermans were already flanking its position. American industry understood a brutal truth that the Axis ignored. A weapon that can't be repaired on a muddy battlefield is just a very expensive tomb. By prioritizing logistics and modularity over individual perfection, the United States turned quantity into a terrifying new form of quality, ensuring that for every Axis kill, 3 more Shermans were already rolling over the horizon to take its place. Willow Run. To the Axis command, a B-24 Liberator was a complex nightmare of 1.2 million individual parts, a machine that should have taken months of artisan labor to assemble. Henry Ford looked at that same aircraft and saw a car with wings. In the Michigan countryside, he erected Willow Run, a facility so gargantuan it encompassed 3.5 million square feet of floor space. At the time, the largest room ever built by human hands. The shock wasn't the size of the building, but the rhythm of the machines inside. While Japanese factories were still painstakingly hand-fitting components, Ford's assembly line was a mechanical heartbeat that never skipped. At its absolute peak, Willow Run was rolling a fully combat-ready B-24 off the line every 63 minutes, 1 bomber every hour, around the clock. This was industrial sorcery. A single factory in Michigan was outproducing the entire empire of Japan's aircraft industry combined. When Axis intelligence reports reached Berlin and Tokyo with these figures, they were often dismissed as impossible propaganda. They couldn't grasp that the United States wasn't just building planes, they were printing them. The B-24 became the most produced heavy bomber in history, not because it was the most elegant design, but because American industry had perfected the velocity of production. For every Liberator a German ace shot down over Europe, 2 more had already been built while he was landing to refuel. The Axis weren't just losing a dogfight, they were being erased by an automated tide of aluminum and radial engines. By the time they realized the scale of the disaster, the sky was already black with wings from a factory that never slept. Liberty ships. The Battle of the Atlantic was supposed to be the Axis stranglehold on Western civilization. Admiral Dönitz believed his U-boat wolfpacks could sink Allied merchant ships faster than they could be replaced, effectively starving Britain into submission. It was a sound strategy on paper until it collided with the industrial ferocity of American shipyards. The United States didn't just build ships, they redefined the very geometry of maritime construction through modular assembly and the controversial use of welding over traditional riveting. In total, America launched over 2,700 Liberty ships, but the data point that truly broke the Axis was the birth of the SS Robert E. Peary. In a display of sheer manufacturing dominance, this massive cargo ship was assembled from prefabricated sections and launched in a mind-bending 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. This wasn't just a publicity stunt, it was a death knell for the U-boat. The Germans were celebrating when they sank 500,000 tons of shipping in a month, unaware that American yards were preparing to launch over 1 million tons in the same time frame. The shock was the realization that the Atlantic was no longer a barrier. It was a conveyor belt. American industry had neutralized the most effective weapon in the German arsenal, not by making their ships unsinkable, but by making them disposable and faster to build than to destroy. Every time a torpedo found its mark, 2 more Liberty ships were already sliding into the water on the East Coast, laden with enough tanks and grain to negate the loss 10 times over. The Axis was trying to win a war of attrition against a country that viewed attrition as an invitation to double its production speed. By 1943, the wolfpacks weren't hunting prey. They were being buried under a mountain of American steel that moved faster than their torpedoes could swim. The Manhattan Project infrastructure. The final collapse of the Axis wasn't triggered by a single laboratory breakthrough, but by an industrial undertaking so massive it bordered on the supernatural. The Manhattan Project is often remembered as a feat of physics, but in reality, it was the greatest construction project in human history. To create a weapon that used mere grams of material, the United States spent $2 billion, nearly $40 billion today, and mobilized an army of 130,000 people. The true scale of this shock was hidden in the hills of Tennessee. At Oak Ridge, American industry built the K-25 plant, a structure so vast and energy-hungry that at its peak, it consumed 10% of the entire electrical output of the United States. Think about that. One single industrial complex utilized more electricity than entire European nations just to refine uranium. The Axis never stood a chance because they were playing a different game. While Germany and Japan struggled to keep the lights on in their bombed-out cities, the United States was conjuring entire secret cities out of thin air, complete with schools, theaters, and thousands of miles of pipes and wiring, all within months. The bomb was the result of physics, but the ability to build the massive high-precision infrastructure required to produce it while simultaneously fighting a global war on two oceans was a feat of pure industrial will. It is this relentless drive that truly defined the greatest generation. If you found this deep dive into the hidden machinery of victory fascinating, please consider hitting the subscribe button and sharing this video. It helps us keep uncovering the stories that shaped our world. Thank you so much for watching and for your incredible support. The Axis didn't just lose to a better army. They collapsed because they had provoked a civilization capable of industrializing the impossible.